Welcome to Fix It Faust. Today we are going to be working on my 2016 Toyota Tacoma. The thing we're going to be replacing is the driver's side parking brake. I had already replaced the passenger side parking brake, and the reason I did that is because I was having issues with that side, the passenger side, seizing up anytime I put the parking brake on in like cold temperatures, anything like 30-20 degrees. That's how it started. Eventually it would even do it during warm temperatures. So I had to get the problem fixed, and what ended up being the issue was I was getting water into the brake housing, and then that had formed rust, and so anytime I used the parking brake, it would just stick and wouldn't be able to get it freed unless I put the vehicle in reverse, and I had to put it in four-wheel drive just to break it free. Let's get to work. Here I'm showing you the routing for the passenger side parking brake cable. So this was my video in reference to the cable routing when I did the passenger side. In today's video, you'll clearly see the routing for the driver's side. First thing you're going to need to do is knock the brake drum off. Here I'm just trying to use a hammer to see if it'll knock it loose. I didn't have any luck, so I had to resort to using bolts to help leverage it out. Here I'm just cleaning the threads so that I don't cross-thread them on accident. Bolt size is listed on the left-hand corner. So you're just going to tighten each side evenly until that pushes the brake drum out. If you're having a lot of resistance, you're going to have to loosen the adjuster nut from the back side of the brake drum. To do that, you're going to reach in from behind and lift this lever up with one screwdriver, and then use your adjusting tool to loosen this nut. That way you have enough play with the brake drum and the pads. Now the brake drum should come free easily. I'm just going to hit it a little bit with brake cleaner just to clean up some of the gunk. Realized I should have used something a little more durable than a cardboard box to do this, but that's what I had. Now that's all cleaned up, we can start removing the springs. Here I'm just using a pair of diagonal cutters to remove it. I do have a hooked tool that is specifically used for these springs to install them. We'll see later in the video. Now I found that these, when you go to remove the heavier springs, the brake pads tend to move a lot, so I found it a lot easier to put a screwdriver in the back to help hold them in place. This one is probably one of the toughest springs to remove. I'm just removing the adjuster lever out of the way. That way I don't bend it. Give me a little more room. To remove these springs, I used a pair of dikes. You just want to be careful that you're not pushing so hard that you're cutting through the springs. I'm installing new pads and springs, so I wasn't too worried about cutting them. Now I almost got the spring out, so I'm just using the hooked tool here to get it the rest of the way out. Before you remove this lower bracket, make sure you have markings on either bracket, that way you can line everything back up when you go to reinstall everything. To remove these spring clips, you're going to find it easier to reach your hand behind there to hold it, otherwise it's just going to keep spinning. Now that you have that brake pad free, just gonna pull up on the parking brake cables. Just gotta pull that spring up to give you enough room to free it. Now that we have everything out of there, just gonna hit it again with some brake cleaner. Now we're gonna use 10mm socket to start removing the cable. Now, my first bracket that I'm going to remove is on my frame. It's not on my leaf spring, and that's because when I added the leaf spring, I got rid of the bracket there, so that way my parking brake would be less likely to bind when off-roading. So I only will have 3 brackets instead of 4. So the next bracket you're gonna loosen and remove is gonna be on top of the frame. I'm just showing you the location here. Again, we're gonna be using a 12mm socket to be removing this bracket as well.
And then you can come over here, and this bracket you do not have to remove. You just push on the brake cable and it'll come out.
Next, we're gonna go inside the truck and start taking the center console apart. To remove the shift knob, you're gonna push down on this little clip. And it's kind of tricky to do with one hand. As you see there, I'm trying to loosen it. It's just catching still. So just make sure you push that down a little further and then it'll come right off. Now you're gonna separate the trim pieces by pulling straight up with the front part. And I had to hold the cubby part down the back part to keep the whole thing from lifting. What I should have done was left those 2 bolts in the cubby so that the back part didn't lift up. Now, there is a wire under there you got to be careful of, so you're going to have to take that apart before you can remove it the rest of the way.
Let's do this.
To remove this clip that's holding this wire up, you're going to use a little tiny screwdriver. That way you can get to this small clip edge there to release it. Going to remove the bracket holding the transmission cable. It's a very tight space, so the more room we can get for our hands to get this cable the rest of the way out there, the better. Now you're going to remove the parking brake cable end stop. I have mine zip tied in because when I did the passenger side, I snapped the little clips that hold it in place. So if you're anything like me with plastic clips, I'd go ahead and order a spare one of these before you do the job. I'll have a link in the description with the part number. Here I'm just giving you a better idea of where those clips are, so maybe you're able to get it out without breaking it. This was probably one of the most frustrating parts of the job just because you have such limited space to work with. If you take the cable out back to front like I did, it'll be a little easier because the weight of the cable will be pulling down. So once you get one of those clips to release, the weight of the cable will hold it in place. So what I did there was I reached under and undid the 2 bottom clips, and then you take a screwdriver and push the top clip out, and then it should release the whole cable and it should push right out. What you can do is you can use a socket or something to help do the same thing. A 16mm socket will fit over it. I'm just not sure how well that'll work in a tight space like that. Now you're going to want to lay your cables out and verify that they're the same length and that all the brackets are in the same location. I'm just spinning the brackets in the correct orientation. There will be one bracket that you have to swap over from your old cable to your new cable, and I'm removing that bracket that goes on the leaf spring off because I don't want it on there. I just used some tin snips to cut that bracket right off. To install the new cable, you're going to want to do it front to back in the reverse order in which you removed it. cable will push right in there just with a little bit of pressure once you get it lined up. Ensure that all 3 clips are fully engaged so you have a good seal. This portion of the cable is going to go diagonally over the gas tank over to the frame of the truck. Make sure you don't forget to push the cable back into that first bracket. The metal sleeve on the cable should be centered in that bracket. Once you have that slack pulled out, the second bracket is going to be located on top of the frame. And you want to make sure that that's not cross-threaded. Again, another tight space. If you have an electric ratchet that's at a 90-degree or 90-degree drill, this will make this job a lot easier to remove and install this bolt. Maybe one day I'll get one, make my life a little easier. The next 2 bolts are going to be tightened down to 13 Newton meters with the 12mm socket. I'm only going to have 2, you're going to have 3 unless you cut the bracket off like I did. You can see on that clip on the leaf spring right there would be the 3rd bolt location. Now you're going to fish the cable through the back plate there for the brake drum. I'm going to attach it with these 2 bolts. Now I didn't really like how that bolt was going in. I didn't want to risk cross-threading it into the cable end. Not sure if that's aluminum. I didn't want to strip it out. So just take your time and make sure everything's lined up. You don't want to risk destroying the cable before you even have it installed. Torquing these to 8 Newton meters. Now before you start putting the brake drum together, be sure you go inside the truck and put this cable end in first. Otherwise you'll have a heck of a time fighting the spring, trying to get that in place. Clip the cable end stop in place. Now we're ready to install the transmission cable bracket. I found it easier to put the cable on the bracket first and then install the bolt. Snug it up to 13 Newton meters. And we're ready to move on to putting the brake drum back together. There are 6 contact points that you're going to want to put ceramic brake grease on. Don't just use any grease. You're going to ruin your brake pads. Not going to lie, getting that cable end back into the bracket was a bear. It took me an embarrassingly long time to get it where I needed it. There is a much easier way to do this. Instead of just using your hands, you can use a pair of pliers, make your life a lot easier. I was just afraid of fraying the cable. In hindsight, it would have been just fine. So if you don't want to ride the struggle bus like I did, you can use a pair of vice grips here. Get it in behind the spring there, lock it in place, and then you'll be able to slip it into that bracket a lot easier. Using a spring compressor tool, we're going to install our spring clips. When doing this, you want to make sure you turn it 90 degrees and it should fall into little dimples on that retaining washer. I like to line the brake shoe up with the caliper. That way you don't knock it from side to side and you don't dislodge the metal rod inside of the caliper because they're a real pain to get back in there. I'm trying my best not to touch the brake shoe as much as possible. Ideally, I should have some gloves on so I'm not getting my hand oils all over the brake shoe. Install the spring clip for your front shoe. When you go to install this lower spring, if you notice that you're having a hard time getting it behind the black tab, then your brake shoes more than likely aren't seated properly. Here you can see my shoe shift into place when I pull it back and up. Put the screwdriver in through the back plate to hold your brake shoe in place. That way when you go to install this heavy spring, it doesn't move around as much. Some people will have this lower bracket already installed on the shoe when they put the shoe on the backing plate. I found it easier to install the brake shoe than install this bracket. There should be markings on each bracket to ensure that everything's lined up. Reinstall the second lower spring. You should be orienting the hook downward. Once the springs are in place, make sure that your brake shoe is lined up. There you'll see it seat into place. I decided to install this adjuster spring after I had all of the other springs in place. I found it was getting in my way when I went to install that heavier spring up top. This last spring goes diagonally from the bottom of the adjuster spring / clip down to the brake shoe. I'm installing a new drum, so I'm just going to hit it with some brake cleaner first just to get rid of any grease or oils that are on it. Put some anti-seize on the hub. That way when you go to remove your brake drum for future maintenance or repairs, you're able to get it off and it's not seized on there. The manufacturer will recommend reinstalling a little paper gasket that goes there, but I'm foregoing that and just hitting it with a lot of anti-seize. There the drum didn't fit over the shoes, so I'm just using my adjuster tool and loosen the adjuster nut. That way I can get the brake drum over the shoes. As you can see there, I'm using my other hand to hold the adjuster clip out of the way. That way I can loosen the adjuster screw, because otherwise that clip keeps that from rotating in one direction. In the Tacoma, these brake drums are self-adjusting, so it'll allow that adjuster screw to expand but not to get shorter. So as your brake shoes wear out, that adjuster screw will allow your brake shoes to push out against the brake drum. That way you don't have to manually adjust the screw anytime you get some brake wear. There I'm just feeling and hearing for a slight rub between the brake shoe and the brake drum. Use your adjuster tool to reach through the back plate to expand that adjuster nut to where you're happy with the drag you're getting.
Have a little drag to it though.
You want to inspect the lever travel before you reinstall all of your center console. The travel should be at 5 through 7 clicks when pulling with a force of 45 pounds per Toyota spec. If you have more than 7 clicks with your lever travel, you're going to want to tighten this adjuster nut which will pull any slack in the cable, giving you the proper lever travel. Connect your 12-volt power supply and the wire retaining clip. Before you push the front part of your center console into place, don't forget to reinstall this wire harness. When you're lining this up, there's 2 clips back towards the cubby area that you just want to be careful you're lining those up. At some point when I did a job, I had bent these, and luckily they didn't break, so I'm just being very careful not to bend them further. Just give everything a little push and it'll snap into place. To reinstall your shifter knob, tighten it until it's snug. Don't forget to push the boot retaining clip up until you hear it pop into place. Using a 10mm socket, you're going to tighten these 2 bolts till they're snug. To wrap this job up, put your wheel back on and tighten your wheel according to manufacturer's specs. I'm not a licensed mechanic, so if there's any professionals out there watching this, please list any tips or tricks you have in the comments. I'd be interested to see what you have to say. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button for future content. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.